Hi, I'm Britta Jensen. I'm the author of Hirana's War, and I'm going to read chapter 3, where we meet Leanora again after being introduced to Gulnaz, who's a new character in the series. Chapter 3, Leanora, 6 months later, Lepidaya, planet Aloya. Spring burst through the verdant hills surrounding Lepidaya. Tiny yellow flowers crept into the crevices of the white stones of the terraced buildings of the city. I liked tracing my hands across the new life as I made my way home from the hospital in the late afternoon. Every day I scanned the skies in anticipation of more Hiranian refugees, but it had been 3 months. I wanted to believe we were safe from further arrivals. I stopped on the rounded red bridge that was the last bridge across the channel before the road to my parents' house. Dark clouds were rolling in, and the cold sea breeze whistled through the surrounding buildings. I'd forgotten to bring my cloak, the day sunny and cloudless when I'd left home that morning. Tarok stopped next to me. "You're cold. Come closer," he said, holding out his hand. I didn't move, trying to puzzle out the tension in his face. I had originally thought it had to do with the Kardouche refugees and how long I spent at the hospital healing and transporting patients. But after I'd reduced my hours, the tension remained. Vali, my ulso, wove his massive brown body between us every few seconds. His fluffy brown and white fur was shaggier in the winter. I held out a hand for Vali to stop. He barked and sat on his haunches. Tarok's green face was stony as he held his hand out. I took it and he kept staring at me in the lamplight. A light mist turned to rain and his eyes were hard. "I have a question." I'd never heard him so tense. "I want us to decide what we are, what our future is." I inhaled the faded scent of lemons off his skin and wrapped my arms around him. "More ulsos?" I joked with him. "Stop teasing me." He relaxed in my arms. I wish deciding didn't feel like it would change everything with my parents. I looked up into his now shadowed face. The silence felt like it was communicating more than what I was able to say. The rain whooshed past us in a fine mist, obscuring the hills and darkening the day prematurely. I took hold of his hand, an agitation in his grasp. I didn't want things to change yet, but I could see he didn't feel the same way. I raised my hand to his cheek, but he backed away from me. "What is it?" I kept my hand outstretched. "What did I do?" He sandwiched my hand between his large green palms. "You've seen the Wet Allworth light celebrations every month for those who are marrying." He cleared his throat, looking up before meeting my gaze, his dark eyes shining in the dim lamplight. "We can make what we have permanent." "We can," but I wasn't certain I was ready right at that moment. "I do want that. You know I do." I squeezed his hand. "It's what we've been waiting for." How did I tell him I was afraid without hurting his feelings? "You do not love me enough?" He let go of my hand. "I'm 17. You're 18. We live with my parents. So much would need to change to make that happen. Are you ready for us to live on our own?" "We live in the same house and do not." His voice trailed off. "I know." It was a subject we discussed enough. It was impossible for us to be together in my parents' house. "We've only known each other for 9 months, I said. Had it been so short? The trek across Aloya had felt like years. So much happened to get us here. I want to feel like we're stable before... Then my mind imagined the possibility of us standing under the Brighton tree. Crowns of flowers on our heads, everyone singing under the pink and white blossoms. A distinct peace descended over me when I thought of the two of us there. He stood up straighter, the outline of his muscles palpable beneath his thin sweater. "In Hagoth, I had my own house, my own ulsos, freedom." He leaned into me, his bass voice lower. "I cannot do this for much longer." He tapped his foot against the cobblestones. If I didn't set a date with him, would I forfeit all the good in our relationship? I wasn't ready to leave my family. "We're too young, Tarok." "Last month, a couple younger than us was married." I laughed. "Lexa and Malto are 5 years older than us." "What do I have to do to prove this is right for us?" he asked, his lips at my neck. My pulse increased and I brought him closer to me. At that moment, I wanted us to be alone and not always stopping because we had no privacy. And maybe I was waiting for something more definite. Now that the moment was here, "Talk to my parents with me," I said. Tadok's lips were on mine, and the warmth of his tongue was new. It felt like weeks since we'd really kissed. Both of us had been rushing around to help the Kardouche refugees to save lives. I let all of those frenetic thoughts die under the weight of him against me. I put my hand on his cheek, stopping us before we made fools of ourselves in public. I want to be with you, but we need to discuss it with them. Can't we set a date and tell them without consulting? He kissed my knuckles. He held me closer to him, and I knew what he meant. I let him go and started back toward the house while there was still light. Soon the shadows were too hard to distinguish from the ground, and I held tight to Vali's reins for him to guide me. Tadok took my hand, and we walked in silence, Vali's bushy brown tail slapping at our arms every few seconds. When my father opened the door to welcome us, Tadok didn't miss a beat. Leanora and I want to take on the light, to be married. So keep reading Hirana's War, which releases October 1st. You can pre-order a copy and get a signed, personalized copy from me. I have a link in the notes. You can also visit my website, www.britta-jensen.com. And if you join my mailing list, you get all of my news and free stories and lots of extras that you won't get without joining my mailing list. So I look forward to hearing what you think about Hirana's War, and have a great summer.